Our third topic this evening is about why doctrine matters. So theology is how we talk about God. Doctrine is the teaching of the church that results from this. There's a word which is dogma, which literally means opinion or that which is given. And it's the particular way of putting into words a decision about teaching so that it can be passed on. Now the doctrines, the teachings of the church have emerged over time. Sometimes they've been developed, evolved or built upon according to the needs and understanding of particular periods. So while we believe the same core things that the apostles believed about Jesus and passed on, at the time no one had really thought that you needed to put into words exactly how he's both God and man. John Henry Newman famously discussed this idea in his essay on the development of Christian doctrine. He used the phrase, "To live is to change. To be perfect is to have changed often." Now, doctrinal issues, how we pass on the teaching of the church, is what bishops and theologians are for. Often they meet together, and together they can decide certain doctrinal matters. In the first century of the church, there were a number of general ecumenical means of the whole world, councils, in which the whole church gathered, or representatives of the whole church gathered, to agree on certain doctrines. Councils still take place today in various forms, but sadly, because of the divisions of Christians over the centuries, they're only authoritative within their particular denomination, although other denominations do take note of their views. Though the Church of England and the Anglican Communion don't try and define the doctrine of the whole church, we accept the core elements of the faith as articulated in the creeds and are sort of widely understood by other traditions, mainstream traditions. But we can change in some of the practicalities. So, for example, we don't think that it's a matter of ultimate doctrine about whether men or women can be bishops. That's a practicality for working out in the various churches. But sometimes church teaching is thought about from a particular perspective. So you get schools of thought. And you get them also from particular experience, so pastoral theology, feminist theology, or liberation theology. Doctrine can also be quite contentious, and for good reason, because even minor changes or developments can have big working out and implications. This topic aims to show why doctrine matters from the perspective of systematic theology, thinking about the various topics, and also how that works out in practice. Learning to speak the language of doctrine. There's certain words that have particular meanings within Christianity, within doctrine. The Bible provides us with a basic understanding about some characteristics to use when revealing God, but theologians are often built on these and have a basic agreement of what they mean. Now, there's a recognition that they always fall short because they're human language talking about God who's beyond us. And some would argue that all you can say is what you can't say about God. This is known as the via negativa, or a wonderful word, apophatic. But most theologians agree, most Christians agree, we can say that God is infinite. He has no bounds, transcendent, beyond time and space, and yet immanent. God is involved in time and space, but this doesn't limit God and God's freedom. Omniscient, knows all things. Omnipresent, present to all things. Omnipotent, has power over all things. The infinity of God, he's complete and perfect in every respect. And so his love is total and free and unconditional. The source of all truth, all that's beautiful, all that's good. God is, as Moses had revealed to him. The name of God is I am that I am. He's the only necessary being, and all else flows from God. This is the whole of creation, not just humans, not just living organisms, not just organisms we like. It includes viruses and bacteria, as well as stones, mud, stars, planets. Quick word on heresy. Disagreement doesn't mean that someone has strayed into heresy. The heretic is someone who's a Christian but persists in trying to get other people to agree with the belief which the church has decided is incorrect. Someone who's not a Christian or simply disagrees about something's not heretic. No, the key thing is that you are a Christian and you want other people to accept your way of viewing things, which is a way that the whole church community has rejected. So, for example, there'll be different ways of understanding exactly how Jesus brings us back into relationship with God. Atonement. Some of these will match well with the Bible, even though they maybe pick up different strands of the Bible. And sometimes those different strands can lead to views which seem to be opposing. That's not heretical, unless what they're saying and thinking undermines the basic teachings of the church. When all is said and done, orthodoxy is the hard discipline of learning to say what needs to be said and no more. Too often those we've learned to call heretics have tried to say more than can be said. They have succumbed to the temptation to say too much by explaining what cannot be explained. Orthodoxy shows why what we believe cannot be explained, but can only be prayed. Now, heresy matters because it undermines the community, which is founded on some shared, agreed understandings. In some periods of Christian history, particularly right in the beginning, issues of Christian faith were hotly debated, deeply controversial. People were formally cursed, anathematized, and cut off from the Christian community. In later centuries, the basics of Christian doctrine were firmly established. But we still have controversies about doctrinal matters this day. Perhaps we're less outspoken about them, but we still debate and we can still be divisive on them. The Church of England is delightful in that it is a broad church. There's lots of different places where you can find a spiritual home here, but it's not the same as a free-for-all, anything goes. Things have to be measured against the Bible and measured against the traditions as handed down to us. Otherwise, we could end up in the position of having groups that really undermine people's knowledge and love of God by the things they say. I'll leave you to read the section on why heresy is not always bad. But now I think it would be good for you to do the activity 3. What does the Bible say about the attributes of God? And follow up those references.